back to Folk Tales. I've got a great story for you today. I know you guys love mysteries. I know you guys like treasure. Well, today we've got hidden caves, we've got treasure, we've got mummies and monsters, and a huge exploration, and it's an unsolved mystery. So I'm gonna leave it at that, so you better sit back, relax, put those thinking hats on, because we're gonna go explore hidden caves of American history. So my story today takes place in Death Valley. Now, Death Valley is a land known for its extreme heat. I mean, one of the highest, driest, lowest places on Earth. Sometimes temperatures during the summer get like 134 degrees, which is super, super hot. We think 90 is hot. Think about 134 degrees, all right? But this area, even though it's hot, still has been known to harbor lots of people over the last 9,000 years. So this is where our story is going to take place today, in that hot, humid, dry place of Death Valley. So in early August of 1947, there was a man by the name of Howard E. Hill of Los Angeles, California, who was part of this California Transportations Club. All these men that came together to talk about crazy findings or buildings or explorations. And he came to this group of people about this crazy story about this lost Indian tribal burial ground that was deep in the caves of Death Valley that housed these ancient Native American artifacts and treasures. Well, they thought this story was crazy and they didn't believe him until he came with more information. So today, we're going to talk about an American legend or a myth called the Hidden City of Death Valley. Hill had a good friend by the name of Dr. F. Bruce Russell, who was a retired physician from Cincinnati, Ohio, but who had long had a passion for exploring, all right? So he retired and he teamed up with a colleague by the name of Dr. Daniel S. Bouvet, who was known as an explorer amongst his friends and who had experience going on these explorations in Death Valley. And on one of his adventures, he claims that he came across and discovered a series of these complex tunnels that wove all through the hills and the mountains of Death Valley. So for months, Bouvet told Russell all these stories about these fascinating unknown caves, to the point that they took an extended period of leave and they went and they headed out and they decided they were going to research and explore and check out any of these caves and see if there was any mining opportunities. So in 1931, they set off on this archaeological excavation through the hills of Death Valley. So according to the story, Russell was hard at work mining these caves, all right? They were in Death Valley, they were exploring, they had just begun when they started digging and mining, looking for certain gems, crystals, gold, whatever they can find, when the soil gave way and he fell in the cave to this hidden area and this hidden system of tunnels. And they went in all different directions. Well, of course, he's naturally very curious, and so was his buddy. So do you think they're gonna sit there? Or do you think they're going to go explore even though they don't know where these tunnels go? Yeah, they're going to go explore. And so they just pick a random tunnel and they decide they're going to follow it and see what's out there. So they're following it deep into the cave. Never did they imagine that as they followed these caves, they would come across something that would be probably world-changing if presented to the right person. So they're winding through this tunnel and it leads them to this dead end, and all of a sudden standing there, they see this mummified remain of these two gigantic men that were 8 and 9 feet tall. No, that's right. So imagining they're going through this cave, all of a sudden they come up and they see the two biggest humans, or mummified, what looked like a human they'd ever seen before, standing 9 feet tall. Okay, well, this is the craziest thing about these two men, okay? So these giants were clothed in these garments, so these clothes that consisted of like jackets and these trousers and pants that went to their knee. But the crazy part about it was the material that was used on these clothes was this dye-grade material, unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Not any of their clothes or anyone they knew had clothes that were manufactured and made from these materials. And that wasn't it. The room that these mummies were in, these mummified men, had several artifacts and resembled like Egyptian and American Indian designs. And so there were hieroglyphics that were chiseled all into the wall, into the granite. There were burial places where they saw burial grounds. And so they started to look around and figure and say, I think we may have found a very old Indian tribe and its tribal hierarchy burial ground. So instead of just staying in one room, they had just found the gold mine. They decide they're going to explore a little bit more. So they start following other tunnels around, and they're leading a left and they're leading to a right. And all of a sudden, they come to another room, as they described as a ritual hall of these people. So once again, they found artifacts, they found markings, they found preserved bodies of animals. They even found preserved remains of dinosaurs, elephants, and tigers. So many would go on and they would study these remains and they would believe them to be like a saber-toothed tiger or a woolly mammoth. So this was a huge discovery and they were super excited. Russell and Bove were super excited about this massive discovery. So they decided they need to go back and tell other people so they could do a bigger dive into these tunnels and see what else that they can uncover. Because they had not even touched the surface of what was down there, because they thought, after doing the research and mapping things out, they thought there was probably about 32 tunnels in this cave that went over 180 square miles of space in Death Valley, so southern Nevada, all right? So they take the findings back to that board, and they show many professional archaeologists a couple of the things about what they found in there, and then all their discoveries that they'd written in their journal. And many of them were very skeptical. They're like, I don't think this is possible. I don't think anything's matching up. We don't really believe your story. They're like, really? You found dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers? These appeared on our Earth 10 to 13 million years ago, okay? Like, apart from one another. So no one in the professional world of archaeology was interested enough to really dig in deeper to this story. So, of course, you think they were going to give up right there? No, they were super passionate about this, and they believed they had one of the greatest discoveries of all times at their fingertip. So, despite the scientists' disinterest, Dr. Russell and a group of investors created a corporation that they would call the Amazing Explorers Inc. Okay, and they were going to handle these tunnels, these explorations. They were going to get money donated so they can go on this huge adventure and hopefully profit from it down the road. Unfortunately, the sand in the area in Death Valley, with its extreme weather conditions, were constantly shifting and changing. And so the sand was moving and blowing, and they were unable to find the caves again. Okay, they could not find the spot in which they located. They could not find their path. They could not find the cave. They could not find a tunnel. And he tried to show his friends, and they tried to go back numerous times, but they could never find the one entrance that led to these tunnels. So eventually people started trickling away, believing the story to be a hoax, believing that these men were crazy or were looking for attention. And so people stopped believing them. But this is where the story gets crazy, all right? Time goes by. Russell doesn't give up. He's determined he's going to find this cave. And so he starts telling his friends, I will not give up at anything until I figure out where this cave is. And then I'm going to call you back and you're going to see that I was not making anything up. All right. And so he tells his friends he's going to go out on one of his explorations, that if he's not back in a couple days, come find him. All right. Well, a day goes by, 2 days goes by, 3 days goes by, and his friends are thinking, oh, you know what? He must have found something. So they decide they're going to drive up there and they're going to try to find him. Well, the craziest part about this whole story is the friends go and they're following this map of where they believe Russell's going to be, when all of a sudden they see Russell's car, and it's abandoned on the side of the road, and it's got this burst radiator. It's broken. It's in a remote area of Death Valley, all right? His suitcase is still in the car. Everything, all of his belongings are in the car, and there's a journal left on the seat of his car. Friends search all over for him, and Russell's never found, all right? It's like he disappeared into the mountains. But his friends found his journal, and they take it out, and they're reading, and they're like, something must have been going on with him, because I can't even read this anymore. This is not legible. It's like scribbles. And so no one could understand what his last entry of his journal said. Pretty soon they gave up, and they went back and they told everyone that they believed that Russell had gone missing or passed away. And so Bove, who had been his partner in crime through all this, eventually had given up and left, but came back for this funeral. And he's standing there talking to all the friends, and they bring up this lost journal. And so he goes after the funeral and the processions and everything. He's like, do you mind if I see his journal? And they said, sure, it's no use to us. So they hand him the journal, and he's looking through it. Well, little did those friends know that this was actually, his last entry was a cipher. All right, there was a hidden message in there, and it was left for Beauvais, someone who had always believed in him and had been with him along the way. And so Beauvais took the journal and said, I don't know what's in there. I'll go try to figure it out and let you know. Okay? And he went back to his hotel, and he ends up breaking the cipher. And it's got this location, all right? A location he hasn't been to before. And so when everyone else leaves, he decides to stay a couple extra days, and he gets in a rental car, and he drives, and he goes to this location. He looks around, he gets out, and he starts walking around, and pretty soon he sees something, this dip in the sand. And so he's looking around. No, he told no one he was coming. And he ends up finding what looks like this cave. And so he starts digging, and pretty soon he sees this opening, all right? And he's like, he did it. He found it. He's like, he found it, and he left this cipher, and he wants me to go explore and finish what he started. So he goes into this cave, all right? Or this is what it's believed. He goes into this cave, all right? And he ends up staying on this trip for a long time. People are wondering where, he was supposed to go home long ago. Well, it is said that he found his way into this cave, and he ended up finding his way through one of these tunnels, and he came across pretty much Native American treasure. Like, he found gold and tools and Egyptian findings, and actually ended up taking this and fleeing and never telling anybody where he went. And it is said that he found this Native American or this Egyptian treasure, and he took it for himself. Eventually, people kind of started wondering, where did he go? And so people started driving. They found his car, and they kind of found his footprint somewhat, and they came across, and they didn't see a cave, but they found this gold coin sitting right there in the middle of the sand. And so they picked up the coin, and they tried to find this cave, but they were never able to find the cave again. And so it is said that Beauvais dropped the coin, and the friends found it, but they were never able to find entry into this cave or these tunnels. And so it is said in Death Valley, there is buried tunnels of treasure in Egyptian and Native American history that is waiting to be found, but yet no one since Russell and Beauvais have been able to find those tunnels again. So I'm not telling you to go to Death Valley because temperatures are super high and the weather is super extreme, but I'm just saying, like, sprinkled around the United States, sprinkled around America, are these hidden treasures, and they're just waiting for us to find and explore. So I challenge you, go out there, explore, because you never know what you're going to find. To do this to you, I've never done this before, but this story actually has a part 2, because when we thought the story was over, it was really just beginning. I did some more research, and the story gets even crazier because other explorers went out and found this lost Indian ghost town underneath the mountains of Death Valley. So come back next week, and I've got an epic story that talks about treasure and ghosts and Indian burials and treasure and all these fun things that I'm going to answer and tell you all about. So you better show up. So here you go. See you next week.